Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. So, today we have a very special guest. You know him from a long time, Dr. Manish Pandit ji. And we are today going to discuss the importance of correct calculation of the moonrise. And Dr. Pandit will show us some slides and also educate us how to calculate it. Now, understand one thing that the message is of Ramayana and Mahabharata is more important, but the dates help us make our faith stronger. And that's why astronomy and all these sciences are equally important. So with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Manish Panditji. Namaskar.
Jai Shri Ram, Pranam.
Jai Shri Ram.
So here we are back again, and last time काफी मतलब धुआंधार. Actually, the response was quite tremendous.
Tremendous, yes.
And now I have to just convince people not to just download the video and then start watching because ये क्या हो जाता है डाउनलोड करके ना हमारे जो लोग होते हैं ये काफी डाउनलोड करने में और वो उसके बाद वो भेज देते हैं इधर उधर. ठीक है. तो वो I'm going to ask them to actually watch it on YouTube only. That is far better. But what we were talking last time is the pitfalls in dating the Mahabharata. So we talked about a lot of pitfalls. We talked about two specific pitfalls in the last one. One of them primarily was the taking of Upamanas as actual astronomy observations, which is a huge problem. Huge. I cannot stress it enough. Huge problem. My entire the book which I have, chapter 9 जो है, वो the chapter 9 deals specifically with this part of it, and chapter 10 is actually going into the details of calculation. So that is something which I have not shown so far, except in few workshops, and I think the people on Sattology will be astonished, and I think they would like to know how to calculate the moonrise, because this is something which has completely gone from our, the way we usually, because we are not living in conjunction with nature anymore. So because of that, people, in fact, some people only come out in the night. Matlab, that too only inside their house. And in the day they are sleeping completely. I know, believe me, I know a lot of such people. 1 बजे उठेंगे, ठीक है, या 2 बजे उठेंगे, या 3 बजे उठेंगे कुछ लोग. So some people will get up at 3 p.m. Okay, and when you get up at 3 p.m. your clock is completely zonked the other way around. And of course you're up in the night, but your curtains are drawn, so you don't realize whether the moon is coming out or not or what. So then if you pick up a book and the book says to you that, well, there is a full moon occurring on the 14th war night of the Mahabharata, you say, well, it must be occurring, because you have no idea how to calculate the moonrise. You have never been out and actually seen that moon rising in the sky, and you don't know what is the fallacy which occurs as to the direction of the moonrise in the set. Just like sun rises in the east, moon also has to rise in the east, So these are all very interesting things. Even even I did not know much about these things. And it's only when you go into the text of the Mahabharata that you realize that Vedvyas, what kind of information is there in that text. You only come to know that the stargazers, the astronomers, were actually looking at these sort of things for a huge amount of time. And Indians knew how to calculate these things. We already know they knew how to calculate eclipses properly. We already know they had planetary movements down to the last degree, if not few minutes. So, and that was, so just for the viewers' information, the eccentricity, so the orbits of the planets basically were, determined by Kepler. And that was in the last, 400-500 years, right? In the West, as we know. But hamare yahan, so in India, what has happened is that we knew about these things for a very long time. Now, how do we know that this is true? This is because of the work of an astronomer mathematician from England, from Scotland specifically, by the name of John Playfair. Now, John Playfair was an India-phile. He loved India, and he loved a lot of things which came from India. But he was also very critical of the methodologies and those sort of things. And what happened is that he came across four ephemeris. The ephemeris, Panchang. So four ephemeris which came from different parts of India. What was at that time Thailand, जो अभी है, what is Thailand now? It used to be called Kingdom of Siam.
Yeah.
So he got a ephemeris from Siam. He got an ephemeris from Kashi. Another one from Krishnambaram, and there was another one, I think, from south of India somewhere. Four ephemeris. And these ephemeris, the super thing about this is, by the movement of the planets and various other things, you can actually calculate when this ephemeris would have started. So he came to the conclusion, and this is very important for viewers to understand. He said that the Indians, Hindus, and specifically Brahmins actually in this particular case, because his paper is remarks on the astronomy of the Brahmins. It was read in 1795 in the Royal Society of Edinburgh. And he said that these observations are going back to 4500 BCE. 4500 BC. Just imagine. And that means that the astronomy of India, and he says the astronomy of India is so unique that that is the source of the astronomy. It is not from the Greeks. It is not from the Arabs. It is not from the Middle East. It is not from various other places. It is definitely independently derived. And there are certain aspects to it which are almost impossible for any other astronomy, for any other place to replicate. The equation of the sun's position, things like that. There are so many things which are there, which he says are impossible to replicate. So this is important for viewers to realize. So that means that we had the knowledge. Now, what happened to that knowledge in the middle years, in the era which has gone by, that is all a matter for investigation, speculation, whatever it might be. But we had the knowledge. And now it is coming out, although it is not in the textbooks. And this is the purpose of our talk today, Sattology. Debunking debunking a special type of mythology, because mythology, when it complements Sattology, is very nice. But mythology, when it is just done for the sake of deriding the ancient epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, this is not right. So there are certain kind of mythologies which are very useful. And I mean, people always criticize me, oh, you're unnecessarily giving, because of you're putting your weight behind all this. So now people are saying that, everything which is happening in Mahabharata is true. And my point is simply that how do you know that it is not having some basis in fact? So unless you at least try and explore it, you will not come to know. And similarly, my other thing which I want to say, because some people who will be watching this will think that, oh, Dr. Pandit, he is pulling other researchers down. This is not true. You may have seen my workshop videos. I have congratulated and complimented such other researchers, but in the spirit of complimenting them and saying that these researchers are there, I also have the duty, which is a sacred duty, which is my dharma, to critique them properly. Because aisa nahi hai, I should not just let anything go by. So that is not correct. So my talk should be taken in that spirit.
Correct.
And that is why I'm laughing when I'm doing these talks, because मतलब ऐसा नहीं लगना चाहिए कि भाई मतलब दूसरे को दुख दे रहा है ये पंडित क्यों आया है मतलब शो पे why is he come over here to criticize others?
I must compliment what you're saying. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatri ki Vidhi Vina एकांतिकी हरेर भक्ति
वाह,
उत्पाता एव
वाह,
कल्पते.
वाह. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, you see, so if somebody, you see, my point is simply this, that I am coming into all these things from a spirit of a very dispassionate person. So, आप ऐसे समझिए कि थोड़ा सा वैराग है इसमें. वैराग्य छा गया है इन चीजों में. मतलब इट्स नॉट एज इफ आई एम criticizing anything with the thing of pulling it down, and therefore I would like to say that please read all the other opinions also, but what I am giving you over here is a methodology to actually dissect everything. So because it's very important to dissect, very important to criticize, and a good criticism is always very useful because it tells the people who are, because we owe it to our ancestors. हमारे जो पूर्वज आए, our ancestors who have come, they are depending on this. The future generations will depend on this. If I say, well, 3067 is great war date because Pandit is saying, that has got no meaning. I'm giving you exactly why I'm saying it. And so I just want to do a very quick recap on on what I've said. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, yeah, it says attendee screen sharing is disabled at the moment. So
Please check again.
let me try. Yes, there we are. Perfect. So let me just come to that. And so very quick recap, which I want to make. And before I do that recap, there's one particular thing which I want to show you over here, which is from the Madhvacharya tradition. And this is very important because Aditya ji must be knowing that the Vaishnava tradition, you see, there are quite a few lineages which are given in the Vaishnava tradition. And one such lineage is the Madhvacharya tradition, which is the, what do you call it? The avatars of Vayu. So if we consider this, then we have got Bhimsen, of course, you have got Hanuman, of course, you have got Bhimsen. And then the one after that is Madhvacharya himself, who has come 1237 AD. And this verse I just want to point out because it is a highly important verse coming from the man's mouth and work himself. Highly important to say that Chatussahastre Trishattottare Gate Samvatsaranam tu Kalau Prithivyam Jata Punar Vipratanussa Bhimo Daiter Nigudham Haritattva. And so this is a highly important verse because it's effectively saying 4,300 years have elapsed since my last appearance as Bhimsen. This is an avatar, basically, who is telling you that he has come in his previous incarnation as Bhimsen. And this gives us a rough date of 3063 BCE for Bhimsen, which the commentators on this particular work of Mahabharata.
So this shloka is said by Madhvacharya himself?
By himself, yes, exactly. It's having tremendous, weightage as a result. And so it gives us a rough date of around 3063 BC, but the commentators on it have said this is an approximation. And therefore, this 3067 BCE, therefore, this date is highly important for Mahabharata. This is one particular thing I just want to point out. In my previous talks, I have already talked about Namalwar and all those things. Those lineages also don't go back beyond 3K BCE. So 3K BCE, those sort of dates are accepted tradition dates for Mahabharata for a variety of reasons. I have also pointed out to you in the last one, the Burkle crater, fragment of comet impact. No other in last 10,000 years, you will not find something like this. And this is a massive crater. You cannot even begin to imagine a 19-mile crater in the Indian Ocean. And there, there is no land in the middle of this. So the question of this happening at some other point again is an impossibility. And Western scientists, have actually pointed out 2800 to 3000 or 3050 BCE date for this thing, and there's a mega tsunami which is sinking Krishna's Dwarka. So I want to point out those two things. Now, just a quick recap, that these upamanas which we are talking about, that it is highly important that we don't take upamanas to date the Mahabharata in the internal timelines. Because what will happen is that you can prove almost anything using this. So never do that. Because I can prove a near new moon Chandra to become a full moon. I can take a full moon and make it a new moon. I can make a day into night and night into day. I can do whatever I want if I start doing this. These are fake references. These are not the real references. And they lead to all sorts of absurdities. Basically, you start getting 3 or 4, full moons at various parts of the sky coming in the last 7 days of the war, which you should never do. Because, it harms the research work also. Because people read it and they, after reading it, they won't understand. But once somebody explains it to them, then they understand that that was fake. So that is very important to understand that way. I also want to point out 2 or 3 fallacies and one verse which I talked about last time, but I did not actually mention completely. So this verse I showed you, which is the real observation of Kartika Purnima, explicitly mentioned by Vyasa, happening long before the war. You can see Bhishma Parva 2:23. Alakshaya Prabhaya Hina Purnima Sincha Kartikim Chandro Abhudni Varnascha Samavarane Namastale. And you can see Purnima Sincha Kartikim is so clearly mentioned. And as we all know, Vyas is meeting Dhritarashtra long before the war. It is like a month or so before that this observation has happened. He's talking about that sort of time frame. So he's meeting before the war, and he's talking about observations before the war. So this Kartik Purnima cannot occur in the war timeline, as a lot of other researchers have mistaken. And this is the full moon they're talking about when they're talking about full moon on the 14th night of the war. This is a wrong thing. Why? This is my other verse, which I did not show you the screenshot last time, which is from Vanaparva, the second verse, which is below over here. Tesham punyatama ratri parvasandho smashardi tatraiva vasatamasit kartikim janmejaya. That the Pandavas are sleeping under the holiest of nights or holiest of moons, which is a full moon at Kartika, right? So this is a highly important verse again, and this is in Upaplavya. And this is also happening at that same, when Vyasa is talking about this. So you know how far back that this must be. So this is at least a month or more, and preferably more, before the Kurukshetra war. So this is important to realize. So this can never come in war timeline as the 14th night full moon. This is impossible. So-called 14th night, if somebody is saying full moon. Okay. Now, the fallacy, as I pointed out last time, if we ignore the real observations of Kartik Purnima, the 2 which I just showed you, then the Pandavas are sleeping at Upaplavya. Sri Krishna is on the way to Hastinapur. Kaurava army is now alone on the battlefield with nobody to fight. In fact, in the Kaurava army also, Karna is not there, because Karna is going to meet Sri Krishna a few days after that full moon has happened, right? And that will be at that still when he's in Hastinapur. So these are all huge mistakes which are going to occur, and these are impossibilities which are going to occur. There's another fatal flaw. Pandavas are sleeping at Upaplavya. Sri Krishna is on the way to Hastinapur. So Sri Krishna and Arjuna are both missing from battlefield. So therefore the Bhagavad Gita cannot take place.
Not possible.
So you see what a huge, humongous means. It is like diving into the morass, and no chance. It's like quicksand. Mahabharata research is like quicksand. If you slip into one of these pits, it is not just a pit, it's like a quicksand. You'll never come out. It's an impossibility. So these are things which have occurred in huge number of other researchers have done all these things. They have taken upamanas to mean, full moon like moon, And so they are also casting doubt on the astronomers like Vyas. They are saying that all these are full moon like moons occurring in 7 days. I think Aditya ji must have observed the moon for 7 days near a full moon. And, I'm sure you'll know that.
Every day I see the moon, every day.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Super.
when you see a full moon just before the full moon and after the full moon also, you can make out that it's not a full moon. You
Exactly,
see,
exactly.
never mind, never mind 4 days after and 4 days, 3 days before or 4 days before. So
Yeah.
these are all, yeah. Hanji.
Within a day, it is no longer round. Within a day.
Exactly. So the question of it being a full moon, and if the text is talking about a full moon as a upamana for 7 days or whatever it is, or 10 days or whatever it is. And in fact, I'll tell you the funny thing, people who are mentioning all these things, they are ignoring something, that even after the war, they're talking about full moons. So it is not just that 7 days. So it is going on for like 8 or 9 or 10 days. So you cannot take those upamanas to mean full moon just because your theory demands it.
Yeah, in that
Your
last sloka also, it is comparison of Bhagadat's flag. It's exactly
perfect canopy. Exactly. You
it's a
see, there you go.
comparison to canopy, but like for example, when you say Krishna's face is compared to moon, full moon, it doesn't mean that Krishna is the full moon.
So I'll say I'll change it, that shloka, if you want, so we can say Malya Dama Vata Raja, it says. So this is, Bhagadatta, but we could make it Sattology Raja, Shweta Kshatrena Dharyata. So it becomes Aditya Satsangi, his face is now being compared to, his flag. So his studio is being compared to the full moon. That doesn't mean that that is the full moon in the sky. It's, precisely what you have just said. You've hit the nail on the head. You've hit the nail on the head. So this is highly important that we don't do these mistakes. I totally, it's great to see that you have, picked it up so fast. So this is the thing. Now viewers are going to ask me. So these are the fake moon phases. Please refer to chapter 9 of my book. I have detailed all those moon phases. They are fake. They are not moon phases, and they were never meant to be moon phases. Vyasa has talked about something else. Now, viewers will ask, if this Kartik Purnima is occurring before the war, and if this Kartik Purnima is not on the 14th night of the war, what is the real reference? Right. Now, I have put one verse over there. But just for viewers' understanding, do you know how many verses are involved in this single verse, which is, of course, from chapter 159, 42, critical edition of Dron Parva? There are 60 plus verses. 60 plus verses. And you cannot omit any of them. If you omit them, so these 60 plus verses are pointing to something else. And what is that something else? So let us look at this for a moment. So this is the late night moonrise from Dronaparva, defined in 60 plus verses, which is after the Vadha of Ghatotkach. And this is in a very special time of the war. And what is that time, What has happened is that the warriors are fighting and fighting and fighting. They have gone on fighting in the night, and now they have stopped for a bit of rest because Arjun stops the war. If you go to my chapter 10, you will find the entire chapter there. And I have specifically put the key verses of that chapter there. A lot of them are there, of chapter 159 of Dronaparva, because Sri Arjuna is stopping the war because the warriors are no longer able to recognize who is the friend and who is the foe. They are killing people from their own side. So it is no longer a Dharma Yuddha. And this is supposed to be a Dharma Yuddha. It's highly important to realize. So when this has happened, Arjun says, let us stop the war and we will restart after the moon rises. Right? Because you see, those warriors all know about moonrise and all those sort of things because they're living so close to nature. It's as simple as that. And in the midst of that, you see, you got these. This is just a little while after Karna killed Ghatotkach with his Divyastra, which is reserved for Arjun. You see, so 60 plus references are ignored by so many other researchers as conflicting observation. Anybody who has taken Amavasya start to the war has ignored 60 plus references. We have not ignored them. They have ignored them as a conflicting observation, but you can have maybe one verse as a conflicting observation, but you cannot have 60 plus verses as a conflicting observation, especially, and now let me point out what exactly is this verse saying. You see, the problem with this verse is, this is a very, very definitive verse. You see, this Kamini Ganda Panduna and Kumudanathena. You see, this is a very, very, this is quicksand for all the other researchers. And what is it? This Kamini Ganda Panduna, the lips of a smiling woman. See, the lips, not the face of a smiling woman. It is the lips of a smiling woman, which are shaped like a Cupid's bow. It is a crescent moon. You understand? Tata Kumudanathena Kamini Ganda Panduna. Just like the lips of a beautiful smiling woman, Kamini, Kamini. Kumudanathena, which is shaped like Manmatha's bow, that which is giving a lot of pleasure to the eyes. Netranandena Chandrena, the moon, Mahendri Digalankrita, appeared on the eastern horizon. You see, on the eastern sky. Now, people will say, well, what is there, Panditji? Maybe there was clouds. And I was asked this, in IIT Kanpur. In IIT Kanpur, one really, really good person who is, he's thought about it a lot. And he said, what happens if there is a dust storm? Or what happens if there is something else like clouds which are obscuring that moon? Or a very, a sky which is, it can happen, sky is completely obscured by dark clouds or something like that. So that moon was not seen. And then it is observed again. And then the verse 25, which I'll try and see if I have got it in my presentation over here. But I'll come to it a bit later anyway, which points to the word punaha. Punaha. You see, so that verse 25 is pointing to that you can have a confusion whether it is the battle starting again or whether the moon was seen again, right? And for those people who are taking the 14th night to be a waxing phase full moon, this particular verse, which was verse 25, has been quoted ad nauseum. And they have said a dust storm has obscured it. And to all such researchers and to all their supporters and everybody else who is watching, I would like to say that you are completely mistaken, because the astronomy and whoever has watched this moonrise and watched it later will come to know what the problem is. And Aditya ji, this is a brilliant one. If you ever go on, so what I did to get to the root of this matter is I observed the moon on a 14th night of the waxing phase, right? And then I went and observed it on the 10th night of the waning phase, right? Because, 14th night waning phase, you may or may not be able to see the moon, right? So I went and observed waxing phase, waning phase, and went and observed when the moonrise takes place. And then you stand there only. You stand wherever you are and you observe what happens to that moon. So, if we say that the war starts on a Amavasya, mistakenly if we say this, then the moon which is rising in the east at around 5 or 6 in the evening, 5:12 in the evening in fact. And then if you keep standing there and you watch that moon, it will go over your head, and in 8 or 9 hours when it reappears, right, that late in the night, what is given in the Mahabharata, then that moon will be appearing in the west. It will be close to setting, a few hours from setting. So it will no longer be in the eastern part of the sky. And Vyasa, again, Vyas Guruji, how powerful this man is in these sort of matters. Look at this. Mahendri Digalankarta. Eastern. Mahendri Dig, the direction of the east, Alankrita. So this is the eastern sky moonrise which is occurring. Now, viewers will be shocked when they are seeing this verse. They are shocked now because this is a clear crescent moon which is rising in the eastern sky on the 14th war night. And then what is happening to this so-called full moon which other researchers are talking about? Well, you have to ask them, because this is the, what do you call it? This is the quicksand, like I say. Mahabharata is like quicksand for this reason, that you cannot fudge any part of the Mahabharata anywhere. So that Kartik full moon, I already pointed out what the problem with that is, right? And now I'm pointing out to you the real verses. So Mahendri Digalankrita is showing the path. Mahendri is unambiguously pointing to the direction of Indra, which is east. Digalankrita is the direction in which the moonrise occurred. So the moonrise adorning the direction of the east on the 14th night. And Kamini Ganda Panduna, Kumudanathena. This is a crescent moon. Clearly. Now you'll say, well, one verse. पंडित जी छोड़ दो, एक वर्ष को छोड़ दो, क्या करना है?
Everything changes.
फुल मून ले लेंगे, कोई इशू नहीं है. Why not take a full moon, Pandit ji? Unnecessarily, you're creating all this, you're criticizing, don't criticize, just mota lo, full moon ले लो, अच्छा है, full moon अच्छा दिखता है, कोई issue नहीं है, ले लो. अच्छा, अभी मैंने ये वर्स अगर इग्नोर कर लिया, तो अभी क्या प्रॉब्लम आता है, आपको दिखाता हूँ. See, there is another verse which is occurring just after that. Now, this is difficult to read over here because, but we can, enlarge it for the benefit of the viewer. Right. And this is, they are talking about the, like the horns of a Vrishab, horns of a bull. You see, so that moon is like the horn of a bull. Again, it is a crescent moon, right? So now you're in real problem, because now it becomes a bit of a problem, this, right? So this is the moon which is occurring on the 14th war night. And this creates a massive, massive problem, right? Massive problem. This, by the way, this in Gita Press edition, it becomes verse 46. That is the only difference, the Kumudanathena verse. And this verse is verse 48, just, 2 verses after. But you can look at it in either edition. It is there. It is there in both editions. It is very, very clear. It is a crescent moon. It's a crescent moon. In fact, if you go to some of the appendixes of the Mahabharata in the southern recensions, which are, not present in the northern recension and western, whatever has been taken in the critical edition and Gita Press, you will find additional information. They call it a yellow colored moon. You see? So a yellow colored moon, and that is again a clear moonrise. There is no question about it. So this is a moonrise which is occurring. So this means that this is a late night, 14th war night moonrise, a crescent moon. So why is Pandit ji now saying it is waning phase? I want to say it is waxing phase. This is the next thing, no? Because if we are doing it as a a mock question and answer at the moment, right? This is what happens. So let us do it in that fashion. So let us calculate the moonrise now. And the moon rises progressively later by 48 minutes every day from Amavasya to Purnima. So at Amavasya, if I assume a sunrise at 6 a.m., let us say, for ease of calculation, the moonrise will be at that time. So 48 minutes is one muhurta. And moon will rise progressively later from Amavasya to Purnima in the daytime. Okay. So if the moon rise is at that time on Amavasya, 10th day of the war, I want, so Aditya ji and you and me will have this conversation. If the war starts on Amavasya, if we take first day to be Amavasya, then the moon rise on the 10th day of the war will be when? It will be 10 times 48. Correct. Is equal to 480 minutes later, which is divided by 60. So 480 divided by 60, 8 hours, right? So 8 hours later from 6 a.m. becomes 2 p.m. Okay, this much is clear. Now, what is the problem with this? Because there is another moonrise described in the text on the 10th day of the war, or 10th night of the war. and that is also in the night. So this becomes a real problem. If you say that war starts on Amavasya, then the 10th day moonrise becomes a problem, because that moonrise should occur in the day, and that is also in the night. That is number one. I won't go into that because it will really confuse viewers more and more. So I'm giving you the calculation over here: 10 times 48, 480 minutes, 8 hours later. So moonrise on the 10th day of the war would occur at 2 p.m. in the daytime if the first day was an Amavasya. So this is my first salvo, first cannon fire, which I have put against anybody taking war starting on Amavasya. Now, let us calculate this particular moonrise for the 14th day of the war, because that is where the entire the entire sort of criticism, counter criticism is occurring. That, Panditji, why you are taking this 14th night to be, this, what do you call it, happening, this moonrise is happening in the night. So why cannot this be a waxing phase? So let me show you what is happening in the waxing phase. So at Amavasya, sunrise of 6 a.m., so moonrise at that time, 14th day of the war, 14 times 48, I want you to multiply. So people who are watching this video can use their iPhones or Android to multiply it, but I already know it. So, but Aditya ji can, because it is not necessary to, sort of do it mentally, but one can calculate it.
672.
Exactly. And so I have calculated it. 14 times 48 is 672 minutes. So that is 11 hours and 12 minutes later. So if the sunrise is at 6 a.m., the moonrise will occur 11 hours 12 minutes later, and therefore it occurs at 17:12 p.m. And therefore this moonrise is still in the daytime. It is still in the daytime. I want to point that out. Really, this is really important. So the moonrise on the 14th day of the war would occur at 17:12 p.m. Right? So what problem now has occurred? Now I will show you some more verses. When is that moonrise on the 14th night in reality after Ghatotkach Vad? So Aditya ji will love this. Here is a verse which is occurring in chapter 161, critical edition, Drona Parva. Tribhagamatra Sheshayam, Ratrayam Yuddham Avartata. You see, Kurunam Pandavanam cha Sandrashtanam Vishampate. So now you are absolutely clear that the moonrise is late at night when 3 out of 15 parts of the night are remaining. 3 out of 18, 3 out of 15, whatever it is, but it is very late at night. So this is, calculation wise, this is around 2:20 a.m. in the morning, this particular moonrise. And this makes, anybody who is therefore seeing this particular thing. Now I want to show you, I'm going back to that previous slide, that in the waxing phase of the moonrise on the 14th day of the war will occur at 17:12 p.m. in the evening, not in the night. Not in the night. And here I am showing you the verse, the Shabda Pramana from the Mahabharata. This is not just one verse. All the other verses are also going on in the night only, right? Late at night. But how late at night? This is giving you exact sort of time. So this is, when hardly any part of the night is remaining, that time the moonrise is occurring, and that particular thing is pointing to around 2:20 moonrise of the Mahabharata 14th war night. That means that it is a waning phase of the moon. Now you are clear about it. Now, that question which was asked in IIT, which is the theory which has been proposed by a few Mahabharata researchers, that, well, maybe there's a dust storm. पंडित जी डस्ट स्टॉर्म ले लो, इतना क्या झगड़ा करते हो, इतना क्या झगड़ना, डस्ट स्टॉर्म ले लो, मोटा मोटा हो जाएगा, फिट हो जाएगा उसमें. Now comes the problem.
I think most of the people, they make a mistake. The person who is writing is Ganesh.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Vyas and Ganesh have a pact that unless Ganesh understands, he won't write. And
Exactly.
And so therefore sometimes Vyasdev gives a difficult shloka which is 8800, and and that is difficult for Ganesh to grasp, so he takes a pause. Meanwhile Vyasdev can do some other things. That doesn't mean that Mahabharata is 8800 verses only. Also, this is
Exactly.
another misconception. It is
Yes.
very clearly mentioned. Vyasdev says, out of this Mahabharata Samhita, I gave 8800 difficult shloka, which only me or Sanjay may or may not understand, and Shukdev Goswami understands. Obviously, Ganesh already understands, but he's not counting him because he's the
Right.
one who is scribe, who is a scribe.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, so now it becomes so clear that this is a crescent moon which is rising in the eastern part of the sky at that particular point of time in the waning phase of the moon. But for those people who are still imagining a dust storm, now अभी ले ले लो पंडित, क्या यार तुम मतलब ना, यू आर जस्ट क्रिएटिंग अननेसेसरी वाद मत डालो यार, मतलब इतना क्रिटिसाइज मत करो ना, मतलब हो सकता है, मतलब डस्ट स्टॉर्म हो गया, कुछ एरो स्टॉर्म हो गया, कुछ कुछ तो हो गया होगा, मतलब हो सकता है, इट कैन हैपन ना, मतलब सो फॉर दोस पीपल
But even for
एंड
dust
आदित्य
storm
जी नोज
also, if you look at mathematically, even may the moon maybe not be visible, but still it is taking its own path.
that is the problem, because exactly, you're absolutely correct. So if this was the 14th war night moon, which is if you consider that war started on Amavasya, first of all, that moonrise is very very it's in the day, it's at 7:12, at 5:12 in the evening, it's at 5:12 in the evening, 17:12, it is in the daytime. But that, if now it has to be seen in late in the night at around 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. if you like, or whatever it is, but 1 to 2 a.m., let us say for a moment, that moon has to be seen. You can go and check this. And this was actually pointed out to me by another person who, which I would really like to thank, because she another Hare Krishna person called Suhasini Devidasi, and she pointed it out to me, and then actually it spurred me on a little bit more. And what it is that this particular moonrise is actually occurring, if it is occurring at this part of the time, then it will be seen in the western part of the sky 8 hours later. So 8 hours later, this is the biggest problem, that it will no longer be seen in the east. So I think Aditya ji is happy with this particular thing. So this, these are 60 plus shlokas, 60 plus shlokas which are occurring in the Mahabharata, right? So we now know that what is the correct thing. So what tithi must the last day of the war be is the next question. So now we know that the moonrise is occurring at around 2 a.m. in the morning. So this 14th night must be a Krishna Paksha 10th or 11th night moon. Therefore, the last day of the war must be Amavasya or very close to it, like a Krishna Chaturdashi, right? And we have another few verses from the Mahabharata which are pointing out very clearly that it was a Amavasya on the day of the war. On that day, 18th day, in the afternoon at least, they say it was a Amavasya, because there is a Gada Yuddha which is occurring at that particular point of time. So we know that, right? So anyway, this I have already pointed out this bit of it. And therefore, now when we go back to the verse 25, and now we know that the word punaha, this will never refer to an earlier moonrise. Now you know, because I have pointed out every particular facet of this moonrise. And if you look at it carefully now, tato vinidra vishrantas chandramasudite punaha. This is actually sansadrishyada athanyoyam swargaya kuru pandavaha. This verse is actually pointing to the war starting again. Very clearly, actually. It is not pointing to another moonrise. You see, in Mahabharata, in Sanskrit, these things won't occur because Chandrodaya only occurs once. So nobody is going to point out Chandrodaya occurring twice. It's as simple as that. So this was verse 25, which the some researchers were using. So, but I am pointing it out over here now. Now you are able to see what the issue was and what that particular thing was. And if you look at the verse 43, now you can see over here, there is something which is occurring over here, which is a very interesting one. Tato muhurtat bhagavan purastaj shashalakshana arunam darshayamasa grasan jyoti prabham prabhu. Right? So after a muhurta, from when they started resting, the moon appeared, its early rays eclipsed the darkness. So any doubts about earlier moonrise are dispelled. Right? This is also very important. So I am pointing out all these verses because, it's very important, and that moonrise, had it been obscured, just to reiterate, it would not be seen in the eastern sky. The moon would have moved over the head and into the western sky by then. And instead of that, this moon is clearly visible in the eastern sky and is described as a Chandrodaya. So, and that is again in multiple verses, and in appendix verses also it is described like that. So, as a result of that, the war can never begin on Amavasya. And from this particular information, whatever we are getting from the epic, we know that the first war day is therefore close to a full moon, right? It is fitting in with the Shukla Ekadashi for Gita Jayanti, and or Shukla Trayodashi. In some traditions, it is a Shukla Trayodashi for that Gita Jayanti. So it is fitting in quite correctly with all that. And that 18th war day, 4 days later, is either a Amavasya or very close to it. So I think this really, debunks everybody who has taken Amavasya start to the war should go and recheck their dates for Mahabharata. Their theory has been demolished and debunked. The war can never begin on Amavasya.
Yani कि so dharma kshetra, kurukshetra. So the important thing is to for people to attain nirvana or moksha. So the beginning has to be auspicious.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in this context, because we will be approaching a Pitra Paksh, which will be occurring in, in some time, basically in some days' time. So that is important because, as Aditya ji knows, the Amavasya Tithi is used for Tarpana and Shraddha and those sort of things. And it is never used to start wars of this sort of, these sort of scenarios are not used, basically. It's quite clear. Now, what is the peculiar thing which occurs when somebody messes up this, so the war cannot begin on Amavasya. The first day of the war can therefore never be a solar eclipse. That is also very important to realize, because solar eclipse will only occur on or just around that Amavasya, right? So if the first day is not a Amavasya, which we have proved now beyond doubt, therefore there is no chance of solar eclipse on the first day of the war. Okay, so this is highly important because this is again something which people have taken. Now, what is the peculiar thing which is occurring once we say that the war timeline? Why is that war timeline so important? Why am I spending so much time on this? Why am I spending so much time on Balrama's pilgrimage? So this, I think, I don't know how much time you have. Maybe we can deal with it in the next part if time is an issue. Or we can, I can start off in this part. But the war timeline, Balrama's pilgrimage timeline are intimately linked. And if you get either of these wrong, the other will be wrong. And if either of these is wrong, Bhishma Moksha timeline is wrong, because Bhishma has to fall on the 10th day of the war. So all this becomes a huge problem for, if anybody takes that Amavasya start to the war, I guarantee that their Bhishma Moksha timeline will be off by around 20 days straight away.
So Bhishma Moksha has to be on the eve of Ekadashi then.
Well, Bhishma Moksha, there is a verse for Bhishma Moksha. So Bhishma Moksha, let me see if I've got it in this presentation. If I've got it, then I will show it. Yes, here it is. So here is one of the verses which is being pointed out. and it says Shukla Pakshasya Chashtamyam Maghamasya Masasya Parthiva Prajapatye cha Nakshatre Madhyam Prapte Divakare. Shukla Paksha Ashtami Maghamas Prajapati Nakshatra, which is Rohini Nakshatra, Nakshatra ruled by Prajapati, Madhyam Prapte Divakare, at midday, is Bhishma Moksha. So it is a Magha Shukla Shuddha Ashtami on which it is taking place, and that has to occur just after winter solstice. And that cannot occur on the day of winter solstice. It cannot occur on the next day after winter solstice. It cannot occur on the second day after winter solstice for various reasons, which I will explain in the next part of the, maybe in the next part, which I can explain it. So this is the other problem. So there is, there are a number of verses in the Mahabharata. You see, Bhishma himself says that 58 days he is spending sleepless nights. And he then says that each of those nights feels as if it is like a century has elapsed, right? Now, that also I will explain in one of the future episodes why, probably I don't think there is time enough for explaining all that in this particular portion. But what I wanted to say is that this is highly important. The pilgrimage timeline and the war timeline. So a lot of the researchers get one wrong. Some get two wrong. If you get either of them wrong, your Bhishma Moksha is off by 15 to 20 days. Especially if the war starts, if any researcher says war starts on Amavasya, I have already clearly shown the crescent moon waning phase moonrise in the eastern part of the sky late at night. So the question of that being anything else other than a waxing phase, other than a waning phase, does not arise. So we know that it is a waning phase. And if somebody says it is waxing phase, then you're going to get it wrong by around 15 or 20 days, minimum, maybe a bit more. So that is where you're getting all these theories of 90 days, 92 days, 98 days, 108 days. One person, in fact, contacted me and said, Pandit, you have gone completely wrong. It is 185 days. So you see, because the problem is what is happening, they are counting all the days which is given, 58 plus 56 plus 50 plus something else plus 20 plus 10, like that. They count everything. See, nobody is taking that there's a limit. It can either be 56 or 58, not more than that. Because there are only two verses which are pointing out those 58 and 56 timelines, you see. And where that timeline has to be taken from is also important. You see, do we take it from the first day of the war? Do we take it from when Bhishma is falling? See, because for that, what we have to realize is the difference between Bhishma and Yudhishthir. So anyway, I'll continue with I think that part of it in the next Sattology, because this is I think is already 3:15. So we already completed 1 hour, but I think I have demonstrated enough to show that Kartik Purnima must occur much before the war. Pandavas have to be in Upaplavya at that time. And if somebody takes that Kartik Purnima during the war, then it means that Bhagavad Gita cannot occur because Sri Krishna and Arjuna are both in different parts of the world at that time and not in Kurukshetra on the battlefield. So that I have shown, and plus I have shown that the 14th war night moonrise is a waning phase moonrise, not waxing phase. That's right. So that is highly important, and therefore the last day of the war must be Amavasya, not the first day of the war.
No, absolutely. I think this presentation was very clear, and I can see it because there is events which are occurring, and no amount of clouds or dust storm or anything cannot hide it, because the movement of these planets is very, very precise.
Planets and moon, yes. Planets, moon, sun, there's very,
1
very
second
well.
movement, the humanity will be wiped out. 1 second, little bit difference. So another thing which I really want to cover is, maybe sometime later, we will cover the universe as per Vedic Shastra, because because that is one point which people do not understand. There is a different way in which
Right.
the calculation starts happening in the Vedic culture, and the differences in the Western culture. There is a different way they
Right.
calculate. So, and for us, the moon is more important, because somebody was asking Prabhupada why moon is important, because it gives taste to the vegetables. That's what he said.
Well, now this is very interesting that you have mentioned. You see, then we are doing this presentation on today morning, the Tithi and Nakshatra, why we are so particular about Tithi and Nakshatra. And in fact, I bring out a Mahabharat Samvat Tithi and Nakshatra on Twitter every day, which, we give to the handle I Rudragor to bring out every morning. Just before sunrise, it comes out around 1 hour. And today is a Shukla Dwadashi
Wow.
till till early in the morning, and then after that it will become Trayodasi. But the sparsha of the sun, the touch of the sun to the tithi is basically of Dwadashi.
Mhm.
And that particular Shukla Dwadashi of Bhadrapad is known to be Bhuvaneshwari Jayanti.
Mhm.
The goddess Bhuvaneshwari, who is the goddess of Kanchi, but who is protecting the Shankaracharyas, that particular goddess. And interestingly, it will astonish viewers to know that moon, essentially, so the moon is basically under her adhishtatra. So it is she's the ruler of that particular planet in the shastras, in the tantra shastras also. So how clearly you see, no matter how far you go away from Ved, or you go away from any of these teachings, ultimately you'll end up in the same place. You see, कितना भी दूर जाओ तो भी वो घूम फिर के वहीं आ रहे हो आप भोपड़ा चौक पे ही आओगे वापिस you have to come back to the same place.
No, it's always a pleasure, and it's always a fun to watch you laugh. So I think you always have the last laugh, looks like. So,
I hope so anyway.
so thank you so much, viewers, for watching this exciting show about learning about moon, importance of moon calculation, because all these important events, including Ram's birth, and even though Ram came in Sun Dynasty, but the events are recorded as per moon, because moon has a
Right.
closer connection with earth in many ways. And I don't want to go the distance part, because the Vedic calculation differs from the Western calculation. So we'll discuss that sometime later with Dr. Manish Pandit, and see how the distances differ. Thank you so much. Namaskar, and please keep watching and subscribing. And do subscribe to Saraswati Films, which is @MM Pandit. You can subscribe on Twitter to Dr. Manish Pandit, and to us you can only say @Sattology. We are on GAP, we are on